Hello, my name is Scott Schaefer. Today I've done you a very special favor. I've come all the way out to Mancos, a little town where the West still lives, to talk to Bill Alberts, owner of Rustic Style. Bill, come on in here.
Hey Scott.
How's it going?
Good.
So, give us a little bit of history, how you got started in all of this and how you ended up here.
I started building this rustic furniture in Durango about 12 years ago. And I found that I was running up here to Mancos because there's a lot of wood, a lot of aspen, and driving it back, and finally I realized I'd better off just to build it here and ship the actual furniture. So I've been here for about 12 years. I was working in the building industry, and some of my customers had seen pictures of stuff like this and requested that I could, ask if I would build them some of this stuff. And so I gave it a try, and I actually enjoyed it. A little less stressful than other type of construction. And I just went into it full time.
Huh. Has it stayed pretty consistent throughout the 12 years?
It's been very consistent.
Okay. 12 years. Great. Well, I'd like to get a tour.
Okay.
And I was hoping to start out at ground zero, so let's go logging.
Sounds good.
All right, great. This is a very beautiful place to be. Beautiful time of year. We got the colors changing. What are we doing here?
Well, we're going to get some raw materials to build some furniture.
All right.
We're going to try to select some standing dead aspen. Well, when the tree's alive, it's taking carbon out of the atmosphere, and it's storing it in the trunk and in the root system of the tree. As soon as the tree dies, it rapidly releases all that carbon. So in the short run, the trees do help the environment as far as getting carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. But as soon as the tree dies, it releases that carbon.
So why don't you cut dead trees? Living trees.
There's several reasons. One thing is we might as well let them live. There's plenty of dead trees around here. We might as well use just the stuff that's already dead.
Uh-huh.
And the other reason, the wood's a lot drier. We don't have to let it dry for a year or two. We can get by with drying it for 6 months or so. We're not doing it. We're doing it because
it's
I like
practical.
to think that we're
It's practical.
It's practical.
Not only is it environmental, it's practical.
That's
Great.
right.
All right, well, let's cut something down then.
And here's a real typical tree that we would take. It's not the biggest tree in the forest, but it's really the basic size tree.
Okay, so we've got 2 logs now. Obviously, that's not enough to make this trip worthwhile. So, how many do you think we can get in this load?
We can probably get about 100 logs in the back of a pickup truck, depending on the sizes.
Mm-hmm.
But generally, when I've counted, I have about 100 pieces in there.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's probably enough to make 8 or 10 pieces of furniture.
Right.
And keep us busy for probably 2 or 3 weeks with one truckload of wood. And it really didn't take that much fuel to get up here. We probably traveled about 10 miles. This truck, on these roads, probably gets about 20 miles a gallon. So we will have used about a gallon of fuel to come up and get about a quart of wood. And then not even, maybe a quarter of a gallon of fuel to run the chainsaw. Okay, so we're here at the mill. Tell us about the process from log to finished piece. Well, we basically just take the raw logs and we'll set them on here. And this is just a hand. You just push this through by hand and it will mill up the logs. And this is too a very efficient way to go. I've been cutting all summer. Probably cut about 3,000 board feet of lumber. And I've probably used less than 5 gallons of gas.
Wow.
In fact, this is what I started out with, and there's still enough to cut it probably one more truckload. So we can get a lot of boards from a very small amount of fuel.
All right, so obviously you have tools, but a lot of your work done is by hand, right?
A lot of the work is actually done with hand tools. To take this from a raw log to basically a finished product here, this is a fireplace mantle. Most of it was done the old-fashioned way with the draw knife, which is a really effective tool to take the bark off of the raw log. We don't use a machine. We do use sanders to finish it off and to do the finished shaping. But most of the shaping is actually done with a hand tool, and it's really just a more effective way to do it.
What kind of electricity are you using here?
Well, I have power from Empire Electric, and unfortunately they do not offer the green energy credits. Hopefully, I'm sure they will soon, but unlike LaPlata County, I cannot get the carbon offset credits. So I do use electricity, but I don't use very much. I looked at my electric bill, and I'm using about 5 kilowatt hours a day.
Wow.
Which is less than $1 worth of
Yeah.
electricity per day. So to build a lot of furniture for $1 is a pretty good use of the energy.
Right. Do you try to work your hours of operation around the sun, or?
It certainly helps.
Yeah.
You know, it warms up in here in the morning. Once the sun comes up, it starts to warm up. We get a fire going. We burn off all the waste, the scraps, and it's actually convenient because it just gets stuff out of the way just about as soon as we produce it. We get rid of the scrap in the winter. In the summer, we have to stockpile it and wait until the winter. I burn some in my house.
Right. Tell me about scraps. Yeah, I mean, we know that you burn some of the scraps in the wood furnace here for heat. What about waste, trash, stuff like that?
A lot of the scraps that we do create are just shavings from the wood, and it's very biodegradable. We've got some trails out here. I basically just use that as mulch on the trails. But as far as actual trash produced, there is very little. Most of the trash that comes out of here is really just stuff from people's lunches during the day. And in reality, I wouldn't have to produce any trash except for maybe used pieces of sandpaper. That's really about all that I produce.
All right, so we've talked about the logging process. We talked about the milling process. We talked about the shop process. Let's look at the final product.
Okay, here's a small dresser. And what I wanted to show here is how we really utilize some very small diameter timber. And the great thing about small diameter timber is it doesn't take that long for a tree to get this big. And if you can utilize that resource, you don't have to cut down old growth trees to build something. There's already plenty of stuff out there to build furniture with. And that's what I think is green about this type of furniture. We're not having to kill 100, 200-year-old trees to build something like this. We're using a renewable resource, and we're taking trees that are already dead. So we're not going to kill a tree to get this. And we're also utilizing as much of the tree as we can. We're leaving things in pretty close to their natural state. We've cut this out, we've sanded it, but in reality we have not put a whole lot of embedded energy into this piece of wood. It's pretty close to how it looked when it was standing in the forest.
So when we talk about these pieces, eventually, maybe generations from now, ending up in the trash or ending up back in the earth, we're really what we're looking at is just the nuts and bolts, pretty much.
Right.
As far as
biodegradable.
Yeah, right.
It's not going to be a toxic waste thing. There are things like the drawer glides. These are pretty high quality drawer glides. They're probably going to be worth something 50 years from now. Somebody might want to use them for something else.
Just take them off and throw the wood away.
Yeah. But otherwise, you could compost this if you want to.
All right, when you first started in this business, how many of these practices were planned, and how many have just came naturally with the business?
I think the business itself, by nature, is fairly clean, and there aren't a whole lot of things that I decided to do because it would be better for the environment. Just by doing things on a small scale, it just tends to be a cleaner business.
Do you feel that these practices hurt your business, or do they help your business?
I think they help my business. For one thing, I'm not really dependent on outside sources for materials, and I pretty much am in the supply chain from from the actual raw material to the finished product to the marketing of the product, to pretty much cover the whole part. And I think that helps my business. I'm in a lot more control. I'm less vulnerable to price increases and things like that.
So, do you have plans to grow the business?
I think every business person is trying to grow the business. I'm not sure it's really that necessary. It's better that it's run efficiently. There isn't really any economy of scale in this business, so it doesn't necessarily make it more profitable if I do more volume. In fact, a lot of things that can basically just be absorbed as you do more and more of it becomes an expense. But when you're just doing it occasionally, like delivering furniture, I deliver furniture occasionally. It's not really a huge expense. But if I had a shipping and shipping and delivery department, all of a sudden I'd have to have more people on the payroll just to do that. By being smaller, I don't have those expenses.
Okay, talking about outside forces. What kind of outside forces affect your business?
Well, in the last few years, the price of shipping stuff outside of this area is actually almost doubled. And that has affected me a little bit. I really never like to ship furniture anyway. You don't know if it's going to get damaged en route. You don't really necessarily know how much it's going to cost until it gets there. And I really think people should buy locally and sell locally too. I should try to market locally. It's a more efficient way. It would take much more energy to ship this bed to Dallas, Texas, than it did to actually build the bed.
So if a guy in Dallas, Texas wants a log bed, he should buy a log bed from a guy who builds them in Dallas, Texas.
Or he should come up here on vacation,
Yeah.
stay at our fine hotels, and then take one back with him.
I see.
I highly recommend that. But to actually ship one, I don't think that's such a good idea.
How sustainable do you think this business could get on a larger scale?
I think the smaller the better, really, in this business. The smaller the business is, the less I have to start exporting stuff out of the area. As long as I'm just meeting a local need, then it's great. Once I need to start shipping stuff out of the area, then it becomes less and less screen. The stuff is pretty heavy. It costs a lot of money to move it. The unfortunate thing is, in this country now, in fact in the year 2000, we finally got to the point where we now import more furniture than we build, which is really not a good idea. To build a piece of furniture in China and to boat it all the way across the ocean and transport it across the country, we should be able to do that in this country.
Thanks, Bill, for showing us around, teaching us what you
Pleasure.
do. Join me next time. I think I will do this again, somewhere else though, because I like to keep things fresh. Thanks.